The bow, the long bow, holds a special significance in the hearts of Englishmen. It's the weapon of the underdog against the oppressor. Agincourt, the band of brothers, the few against the many. It's the honest weapon of the common man. And at the heart of this military revolution was a simple stave of wood, fashioned into the most beautiful, deadly, and perfect weapon. The defining campaign for the longbow took place at the beginning of the 100 Years' War. In 1340, Edward III laid claim to the French throne and launched a series of dramatic raids into northern France. The principal weapon was fire. Hit-and-run lightning attacks. What the English king was doing, what Edward was doing, was he was saying to the French, look, your king's not protecting you. He's not looking after you. Where is he? Where is his army now? In the centuries prior to the Battle of Crécy, the English had gone on crusade, where they'd encountered different bows and different tactics. Archers in the East fought in a completely different way to their European counterparts. They fought on horseback. They rode into battle and shot their bows from their horses. Wave after wave with hit-and-run tactics. Shoot their bows, then turn away, come back again for a second wave. They used a completely different type of bow. It was made of different materials and it was a different shape. It was curly. The limbs were reflexed. Maybe this influenced later European design. Shields. This is a 14th century type, sort of shield that a knight would use. You see it with its characteristic heraldic display. But what's it actually for on the battlefield? Well, that's one reason. And that's another. And another. But I can also use the shield as an attack weapon in its own right. Perhaps my favourite of the close-range shock weapons was this, the Francisca, the little Frankish throwing axe. With its delightful sweeping curves, it's very pleasing to the eye, and it was a popular weapon with Saxons and Vikings. Generally, a warrior would have two of these, a pair, and he would get to really quite close range, and then trying to catch the shield men off guard, he would hurl his Franciscas, and then drawing the sword, rush in, hoping to catch the enemy off guard. But the sword was a relatively high status and rare weapon. Much more commonly used was the spear, and this was the main weapon that was used in shield wall fighting. But most devastating of all was the Dane axe, this giant two-handed axe which had a dreadful power. From the gentlemanly art of dueling to the swash and swagger of the silver screen, the sword is at the heart of our romantic imaginations. It's the weapon with which the hero wins out against insuperable odds. It is the weapon that gives the hope that skill can triumph over brute force. And here we have a typical sword of the period. It's double-edged, fairly rigid, and it has a sharp point. It's the sort of sword that can be used both for the cut and for the thrust. It's got a pommel at one end. This is a weight. It counterbalances the sword. It helps it get over that initial inertia, so the sword can be wielded with fluidity and speed. One of the most extraordinary was seen in the extravagant jousts held at the court of Henry VIII's great ally, the Emperor Maximilian. It was spring-loaded to explode on impact in a grand display of skill and theatre. Such elaborate designs were far removed from the brutal reality of survival on the battlefields of Anglo-Saxon England.